And I'll tell you this, more women than you think are staying quiet about Epstein. And so the idea that there are no third parties, it's just ridiculous.
So Tara, you're saying that there were active open investigations and people might have been tried and charged soon, and then Trump shut down all the cases.
That's what I understand from my source.
All right, we got a great interview for you guys now. Tara Palmeri, she's the author of The Red Letter on Substack, which matches Anna's dress today.
It does.
So it's appropriate. It makes a lot of sense. And host of the Tara Palmeri Show, unsurprisingly, on YouTube. All right, Tara's an expert on the Epstein case and recently interviewed Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former fixer, and joins us now. Tara, welcome back. No problem. So let's talk about your Michael Cohen interview. So he used to be Donald Trump's lawyer. He told you something interesting. What was that?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty big breakthrough, actually, in terms of understanding why President Trump might not want the Epstein files out there. And it's actually been really underplayed. You know, I was thinking about it as I saw Michael Cohen on a number of shows saying, President Trump doesn't doodle. His doodle sell at auction. That's at the basis was after the Wall Street Journal reported that President Trump gave Jeffrey Epstein a doodle of a woman, a naked woman with a, like sort of a suggestion that they both knew about sexual trysts. And then, we find out that they sell at auction. He also says he doesn't use the word enigma. We have clips of Trump using the word enigma. He said there's no way that Trump went on the island. We don't have any proof of Trump on the island, Epstein's island, by the way. It's not in the flight records, but he was just saying, I know this because I know Trump. Okay, so it's like, right? You were the fixer, and there was a case right before the election. There was a woman named Katie Johnson, which is not a real name. It is a Jane Doe name. She came through in 3 lawsuits right before the 2016 election, alleging that she was raped by President Trump in Jeffrey Epstein's house in 1994 in his townhouse when she was a 13-year-old trying to be a model. The case was dropped right before the election in November 2016, and she cited intimidation. And I thought to myself, well, who would have handled something like that? And at the time, Michael Cohen was Donald Trump's fixer, right? He handled the Stormy Daniels case at the exact same time. That was the hush money case that actually led to him going to prison for campaign finance violations. He also dealt with the Karen McDougal payments through the National Enquirer, another attempt to keep an affair quiet before the elections. And I first talked to him on his Substack, and he was very defensive. He said, I don't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein. And then he finally said there was one complaint he called her an infant, alleging rape of President Trump, and that he sent a private investigator to try to find this Jane Doe.
So Tara,
first of all,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we actually have that portion of your interview with Michael Cohen. So I if it's okay, I'd like to play that for the audience so they can hear what he said out of his own mouth, and then we'll discuss. Let's take a look.
Okay.
The only case that I was involved with was a Jane Doe, an infant, by and through her mom, Mary Jane Doe, right, as legal guardian. That case was dismissed not because of anything that I spoke. Well, I spoke to the lawyers, and I've talked about this a million times. I turn around and I receive this summons and a complaint, and the averments in it are awful. They're despicable. It talks about basically rape of an underage female, claiming and alleging that Donald was involved in it and all that other nonsense. I ended up taking a private investigator and trying to find out who this person was. And we went to the address that allegedly this minor lived at in the Bronx. Well, lo and behold, the investigator responds back and says the only thing that's there is an empty parking lot. There's no building there. It's an empty lot.
Wow. So what was the takeaway from what he admitted there?
First of all, he's never admitted that before. Literally, he says, I know nothing about Jeffrey Epstein. And that was how he spent the first 4 minutes of the conversation, saying, I know nothing about Jeffrey Epstein. I know nothing about Jeffrey Epstein. I know nothing about Jeffrey Epstein. And then finally admits that he worked on a Jeffrey Epstein complaint. The reason that Jane Does might use an empty parking lot, a place they don't live, is to protect themselves from private investigators and harassment. It is a known fact that they decide to be Jane Does because they are afraid of intimidation, of threats. Courtney Wild, who was a very brave survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, when she decided to file a suit against him, his private investigators were so aggressive, they almost ran her off the road. This is a very common tactic when trying to intimidate Jane Does. Now, the fact that this Jane Doe led to a undisclosed location, a lot of them just choose their lawyer's law firm. That doesn't mean anything. I'm not saying that President Trump raped this woman. This is an allegation of rape. But what I'm saying is just because it led to an undisclosed, a parking lot, doesn't change the case. He's very obtuse in this interview. He won't confirm that it is the Katie Johnson case, even though that is the only case that was filed at that time, the only complaint that was filed against Trump in relationship to Epstein before the campaign. And he says it was dropped around the same time, just days before the election. He says he doesn't remember very well. He says that the lawyers apologized to him when they dropped the case, but the case was withdrawn, citing intimidation. Mm-hmm. And I just think this is just such a bombshell in a lot of ways. And I asked Michael, what did President Trump say when you asked him about it? Because you have to know what your client says about this, right? They're friends. There's tons of pictures together from that period of time. And he said, Michael, it's nothing. Handle it. And he's like, and then I took care of it. And I said, and you believed him? And he said, 100%.
Okay. So, well, part of your theory is that private investigators get hired and that's why they hide their address. And in this case, they did hire a private investigator. So that kind of proves the point. And if it turned out she had used her real address, the private investigator would have tracked her from there on. So, already this is super uncomfortable. I mean, I think that there's another part of the story that we're kind of missing here, which is, so Donald Trump hired a private investigator to track one of the victims from Epstein.
Exactly, yeah.
Who had, had allegations against him. That's kind of a big story, right?
That's a big deal, yeah.
Yeah.
And no one in the mainstream media is covering it, and yet it's in his own words. It's not me with a single source saying, a source told me this, that Michael Cohen did this. This is Michael Cohen's own words.
Yeah, I mean, and do we know if the private investigator eventually did find her? Because she opposed the lawsuit saying intimidation. Now we know there was a private investigator. Maybe they did find her. Maybe they did intimidate her. We don't know that, but we certainly don't know the opposite either, given the situation here. So that leads me to a broad question. I know
Cohen said that she didn't exist. That's what Cohen said, that this woman didn't exist, and that his lawyer said that they had never met her before. But she had 3 lawyers. If it's the same case of Katie Johnson, she had 3 cases. The entire interview, for everyone who wants to watch it, it's on my YouTube channel. It completely devolves into him screaming at me, telling me that I'm wrong, and that and debating the truth for just asking these really simple questions. It's really something.
Sounds like the tone of someone who has nothing to hide. This is crazy. I mean, the behavior of Donald Trump as it pertains to the potential release of the Epstein files is super shady. I mean, super shady. He couldn't have handled it worse if he wants people to think he has nothing to do with Epstein or any of the disgusting, loathsome criminality he had engaged in. And it really does beg the question, why are we not getting the Epstein files? What did Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, talk to Ghislaine Maxwell about? And why was she moved from like a higher security prison to like the Club Med of prisons, considering the fact that she was the person who recruited these minors, groomed these minors, and in some cases even sexually assaulted these minors. What kind of favor was done there? So I just think the whole thing is so deeply shady. Did you have a question, Jake?
Yeah, so Michael Cohen's yelling at you, which is kind of curious because he's obviously turned on Donald Trump. He's been on this show a couple times and on every other show. And so like if Trump was implicated, presumably he wouldn't be angry about that if it didn't involve him. But it does involve him. He was a lawyer in that case, right? He was a fixer in that case. Yeah. So that might be why he's reacting in such a hostile way when it's otherwise, like if it was just a junk lawsuit, easy to say, hey, you know what, nothing of it. If he's not involved in it, he might go, yeah, look at Trump, right? Because he's certainly not on Trump's side. But we're all guessing here. So my question is about the actual allegations. I remember when they came out, and most of mainstream media treated it as outlandish. There's no way it's true, and then the case was dismissed. And I have to confess, that was my reaction. The charges were so, like significant that I thought, really? Is this possible? And then when it went away, I thought, well, okay, I guess there's a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump. Maybe it was one of those. Now I know there's no way you could know, right? But what is your educated guess on like how real that lawsuit was?
I mean, the lawsuit was filed 3 times, and the lawsuit was dropped citing intimidation. I can't say that I have spoken to this Jane Doe, Katie Johnson. It's her decision if she wants to come out. But like I've said before, a lot of these Jane Does do this. I mean, this is the power source. If she wanted to go out and speak out about the allegations right now, she's going up against the most powerful person in the world. And I think that explains a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of fear. I do a lot, my focus on the Epstein story is on the survivors and what they have been through and trying to put the pieces together for them, right? And it's really hard. It is not easy. That intimidation is a huge part of why women stay quiet. And I'll tell you this, more women than you think are staying quiet about Epstein.
Interesting. So, okay, Ro Khanna and Tom Massey are going to do a press conference on September 3rd with some of the victims, and they want the Epstein files released. So the victims are out there, and there's a lot of them. I mean, from what I understand, there are hundreds of them, right? So
1,000.
Over 1,000. So, I guess last question here. Do you know to what degree have they all been interviewed? Do we know how many of them have named other people other than Epstein and Maxwell? Because to me, the bottom line is always, yeah, you could pretend that the file is not there. You could pretend that there's no actual list per se, right? You can pretend a lot of things, but you can't pretend that there aren't over 1,000 victims. There are. And
those are the FBI's own words. They estimated that. They said there are about 1,000 victims. Well, first of all, we know the file exists. It's on the FBI's website right now. You couldn't see it. It's just all black. That is the Epstein file. You just can't read it because it's all redacted. And the victims have lists of the men that they were sexually abused by. I mean, even just Virginia Giuffre's, if you look, well, you can't read it because the men fought to redact their names. But if you actually look at her depositions in the case against Maxwell, it names a number of men that she was trafficked to. This isn't something that's just contained. So the idea that there are no third parties, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's ludicrous to say that it was just Epstein and Maxwell with over 1,000 girls. And by the way, that might mean that there were a couple of dozen or a couple of hundred clients, or it might mean there were a couple of thousand clients because they could have, unfortunately peddled the same girl to multiple men, right? So I'm just like, okay, I keep saying last question, but Tara, has no one ever I know they didn't bring a case against anyone else, but that seems so unbelievable that I'm struggling to find a way in. Is there any case brought by any local authority, federal authority, anyone who thought about bringing a case and then a criminal case and then pulled it back? Or has it been from day one the US government saying, we're never gonna prosecute any of these by their actions, right? Not by their words, which they eventually did say those words, but by their deeds. No effort to prosecute a single one of these, a massive amount of clients from Epstein.
Okay, so Cenk, I was on the show, I think I was on the show earlier this summer, and I was explaining that there is no master list, right? That there's no one list that Jeffrey Epstein held on to, and it was all the guys that he trafficked women to, right? That it was mostly the women that had these lists. And yes, there is no master list. And I actually started going back to some of my FBI sources after we talked, senior FBI sources, senior law enforcement sources, just because I wanted to see, well, what's happening with that? Are they actually pursuing this case? There's 3,000 gigabytes of files that they're hanging on to. Virginia Giuffre told me that her lawyer brought her to the FBI to try to identify her body among the bodies of girls with men above them. And this person said, yes, we have files, we have documents, we're still working on it. That we're gonna be up against the most powerful defense attorneys in the world and prosecutors when they wanna try someone in court, when they wanna prosecute them, they wanna have a strong case. They're really powerful people. And then it's case closed just like a week or two later after I made that phone call. It was crazy to me. Case closed from Pam Bondi. No third parties.
So Tara, you're saying that there were active open investigations and people might have been tried and charged soon, and then Trump shut down all the cases.
That's what I understand from my source, that they were still investigating it. Very much so, wow. At least at the FBI level. Hadn't maybe reached to the DOJ and prosecutors were working on it, but at least at the FBI level, they were very much still investigating.
All right, everybody check out Tara Palmeri's channel on YouTube. She covers this material along with a lot of other good investigative journalism in the news. And check out that interview with Michael Cohen. We'll put a link down below in the description box. And
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And check out Red Letter.
Thank you for being brave enough to talk about it too. I feel like that's why this is such a great place for people to come to, because it's, the mainstream media doesn't want to touch it. It's like,
yeah, that is weird. I mean,
well, thank you for your focus on the victims, because they are out there and they're not being represented. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and by the way, Tara's worked at a number of major mainstream media outlets, ABC, Politico, et cetera, and been a White House correspondent. So it's not like, she's a rabble rouser, and so they can't talk to her about it. It's easily the biggest story of the year, and mainstream media not wanting to talk about it is strange.
Yeah.
All right, Tara, you're awesome. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.